technical interview with Microsoft. Now, it's not Microsoft, it's a contracting company that's filling a position for Microsoft as a contract. It might be I don't even think it's a contract to hire. I think it's just a contract. So I don't know how long it lasts. It is a lead position. No, this one is not the lead position. There was two different contracting companies called me at the same time, same day, for two different positions. One was lead, one wasn't. Pretty sure the lead one just said no. I met with them originally, but I didn't. They wanted somebody pretty strong in Azure, and I was kind of, I know Azure, but I'm not strong in it. I mean, I only spent a year. My last job had me working with Azure, but it was only like sporadically, mostly support, where I'm getting into the logs and trying to find errors and bugs, and a couple of deployments that they did through continuous integration and delivery paths I didn't set up. So it was mostly just kind of getting going on it. So I did not actually get a lot of experience in that. But today I'm going to do something that kind of hopefully will prep me a little bit. I'm a C# developer in general, but I've been doing framework. And I haven't done a lot with .NET Core. And as such, I'm thinking I'm going to try just going to go over one of these YouTube videos. I haven't been able to see a lot where people are... I didn't want to take a class on it. I mean, Coursera probably has something with .NET. I wanted to just kind of see what I could get quick and easy. This is not really that quick and easy. It is a 4-hour class. My technical interview today is actually at 12:30. So I don't know. We're going to see. I'm going to kind of go through it. I've always used Visual Studio for my C# development. In fact, I have Visual Studio on my computer now. I've used it for a number of my personal applications and other things because that's kind of where my knowledge is. But this is going to go into .NET Core, ASP.NET Core. And I kind of want to see what it's all about. I mean, what is the difference between .NET Core and .NET Framework? And I don't know if this is going to go over that, but hopefully I will have a shot at getting somewhere with it. Now, keep in mind, I'm not going to share this video while I'm doing it. I mean, the video I'm doing, this is Julio Casal. I've actually got a link to it in my page. He's just another YouTube dev. He is an eligible one. So if you're following me do his thing, which is what I'm doing now, we'll kind of see how well I learned from it and what I pick up and gather from it. But I would not expect that the best route for you to learn it, if you want to learn it, I'd probably go check out Julio's video, because he's going to go over and he'll probably explain the what's, whys, and what fors of what you're doing. Me, I'm going to be kind of listening to what's, whys, and what fors, and then when he does the actual coding or he does something that actually uses the environments, I'll be doing it, implementing and trying to replicate what he's doing. So that's kind of how I'm going. Like, one of the things it started off, I was kind of looking at it. It just has you setting up your VS Code, and I've never used VS Code for C# because I've always used Visual Studio, and that is a paid application. You have to buy it, and therefore, VS Code is kind of an open source. So you see all these extensions and all these bits and pieces in it. So we're going to probably, I'm trying to do it this way because this seems to be a common way, and it seems to probably be more and more the standard for what people are doing. I'm putting in a couple of tags here. Let's see what else we got. I think that's it. Hopefully we are good there. If you see that I missed some kind of an update, didn't put in a tag or something I need to do to make this a little bit more clear for future use, let me know. let's get started on this. I don't expect I'm going to get too much. I only have, a couple of hours here. It's 9:48. Got 2.5 hours before my tech interview. And this is a 3 hour and 43-minute video. And I'll probably want to go through the whole thing. But I'm hoping I can at least grasp some general concepts. If nothing else, I'll go through it and finish it later. I'm not Microsoft. If I'm actually doing a technical interview with Microsoft personnel, they are famous for having some obscure, weird, out of the book. You got to know what book and what page and what they're doing. Interview question technical thing. And I'm famously renowned for not knowing what they're talking about. Doesn't mean I can't do the coding. I mean, they ask me, I can go, okay, give me 20 minutes. I'll come back. I'll have it written for you. Because usually, it's if you don't know what you're doing, you need to do some research. It might take 20 minutes. If you already know coding, might take 15, might take 10. I don't know. I go, oh, it might take 5. You might find the example you're looking for and do it. And that's kind of how coding works. If you know the basics of it, you understand it as soon as you see it. And you're like, oh, okay. But they've mastered these books, and they usually want you to whip it out in like 2 minutes. They ask you a question. Oh, this is super simple, and you'll be done, and you'll know it in a minute. Well, if you've never done it before, never seen it before, or you've never had a reason or inkling to do that task before, you're going to go, well, okay, I don't know for sure. They say, oh, don't worry about syntax. We want to just help you out solving it. Again, that's nonsense. They do care about syntax. If anybody gives you a technical coding thing and they say we don't care about syntax, but they actually want you to type it out, then they care about syntax. Because why would they have you type it out? They don't care about syntax. You could just tell them, I'll find the function. I believe it's something like blah, 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 because I haven't used it before, but I know where to look, what kind of thing it's going to be. It's either a method or a function. I'm going to go look it up. I'll figure out through the IntelliSense which method function it is. And then I will put in the parameters I need to get back and do certain things. I want to know what they're going to look at, what they expect to see. And maybe they know the method, great. If they know the function, great. But a lot of places aren't like that. Most want the technical. They want you to know. It's not optional. And they will expect you to, if your syntax is like all over the place, like if you put in the wrong method, or you put in the wrong parameters, or you forget parentheses because they think, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing because C# requires parentheses. It's like, it requires squiggly braces, or it's an end if or an if. But if you program in a lot of different languages, you could easily make a mistake in something that's not IntelliSensing pointing it out to you, where you forget. And like if you've been programming in Angular forever and you put in squiggly brackets instead of putting an if and if or a parentheses, depending on if you're doing Visual Basic or you're doing C#, or you're doing or if you're doing you could be if you know SQL Server, you're probably doing begin and end, and you got to remember which enclosures are standard. I mean, heck, Python uses indents to determine what belongs to the if structures and the while structures. So there's a lot of variations there, and if anybody actually knows a bunch of different languages, it's probably pretty easy to get syntactically screwed up because you put in the wrong bits, or maybe one uses what do they call them, arrow functions or whatever. It's just basically when you do the parentheses and then you do the equals, greater than, and then squiggly brackets, which is what you see a lot in React or Next.js, that kind of thing. So, and I'm just learning those languages, but now I'm starting to see all these different syntaxes, and so it just adds to the confusion. And when you're trying to type out, code without any kind of IntelliSense to correct you, to get you pointed on the right language, it's real easy to make mistakes that look like you don't know what you're doing, but in fact you just need to get yourself into that language. So I've famously done poorly at Microsoft technical interviews. I hate technical interviews. I think they don't care. It's like, oh, you've been programming in C# for 14 years. Oh, well, you don't know how to do this version of a object array. You don't know anything. You don't have a clue. That's usually what they come back with. They said, yeah, you can't do this basic development position because I don't know what you've been doing over 14 years, but you don't know this thing. Therefore, you can't do this job. It's like, yeah, okay, that's how that works. You know, I developed the entire application on my own, C Sharp, SQL Server, ASP, Visual Basic .NET, all intertwined in together into one application, using VB scripting HTML and JavaScript, all those things, one big application, all me. It's probably 100,000, 200,000 lines of code, and developed a good chunk of it in a year, and a lot of updates and upgrades and add-ons to that over the years. And no, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, enough hacking away at the stupid tech interviews and the whole premise behind how they do them. I mean, I like to hear when I've done interviews, I like to hear what they've actually done, not the code, not the thing they did, what they do, how they go about solving problems, um, what options and things do they put in, why did they do it? Because yeah, you can fudge this, that, or the other thing, but ultimately, if they're telling you the inner working details and the plan of what they're doing, they probably knew what they were doing, especially if it makes sense to what they did. And you might ask them questions about it. Oh, yeah, well, why'd you do that? Or what was the approach you did to doing that? You know, that to me tells me that they know what they're doing. You know, not so much that whether or not I can throw some random function or method at them and they're going to know the solution. Because maybe they do, maybe they don't. I mean, nobody knows everything in code, and some people, like me, don't always remember the intricacies. You know, every method, every parameter and method. Sometimes they have what do you call it, overloads. There's like 4 different versions with different methods, and what are you going to do with each one? And sometimes they ask you like, okay, well, what are your different possible things with that method? I mean, what parameters are you going to pass on? I don't know. Let me look at the overrides. You know, overloads. I spend the first 20 minutes just complaining about tech interviews. Okay, let's go on to the next. Let's do this.
Code so that it can recognize all of the C# syntax.
So right now he's just setting up this
itself,
Visual Studio
the extension
environment.
that provides additional improvements to VS Code. Things like, for instance, a solution explorer, so you can more easily manage your C# projects and create C# files, and also so that you can run.
He's just telling you about the different add-ins that you might use.
All of that is included with the C# kit. He's also going to install, as you can see down here, Intri code for C# kit, which what it does is just adds a little bit of AI assisted development as you're typing your C# code. And lastly, it also installs the .NET install tool, this extension over here, which what it does is really a tool that provides the .NET runtime or the .NET SDK to other extensions if they need to. And so that is what we need in terms of C# development. Now, the next extension that I recommend you install is one called REST Client. Now, this extension, this is an open source free extension that I'm going to just go ahead and install by the way. So let's go ahead and install it. And this is going to improve the way that we can interact with our web APIs or REST APIs directly in this Visual Studio Code. And we're going to see that later in the tutorial. And the last extension that you should install is an extension for SQLite. Okay, so it's going to be the very first one over here, SQLite by Alex CVCC. So let's go ahead and install it. And this is going to allow us to very easily interact with the SQLite database that we're going to be using across the tutorial. Alright? So yeah, so those are the extensions that we're going to need. And so let's now...
those are the extensions you see me installing now are the ones, of course, he's recommending. You might be able to hear him in the background.
Sure that, that .NET has been properly installed in the machine, right? Just like a safe check. So let's go ahead and open our terminal. And to do that, what you can do is just go into your menu bar, Terminal, New Terminal, over here. And by the way, a quick shortcut for this.
He's got a. Where is he doing that? he's got a hamburger thing next to his. He's got like, I don't know what he's using for VS Code. His don't look like mine. He's got totally different. It's like his is a browser version of VS Code or something. It's like it's not even. I don't know what he's doing. Huh. His, look. Unless it's an older version, that's all I can figure is he's got some kind of older version of VS Code. Because, like, if I look, he's got this he's got this, and then he's got the hammer. So he must have a way to squish this menu, is what he's got going. Because this is inside of his browser. This is the browser itself. And then I don't know what he's got going here. See, my menu is laying it out. So it must be a format. Or maybe it's a way he's got this picked out. But maybe it's just because his window is so small. Maybe he's got a really small window, like he's doing on a 1080 or something, and it just compresses it. I don't know, but it just looks weird to me. All right, back to it.
Some Windows is either Control tilde, right? You type Control tilde is going to toggle that terminal for you, or you can also do Control J. It's a nice way to open and close this terminal, very easy.
It's funny, he calls Control plus Control tilde, which that is not a tilde. A tilde is this thing, the accent, reverse backwards accent. But he says you can go here and just hit. Wow. I don't even, do I even have a project open? I probably do. I need to open up a new project. Well, this was closed, so I should be okay to just go here and go.
Alright, so now in terminal, what you want to do is just verify that .NET is in the box. So just type .NET /version, and that's going to print out the version of the .NET SDK that you have in your box.
Oh, why is mine so old?
.NET /info, and that's going to give you even way more information about.
His was 8. Mine is 6. Why is my .NET version so old? Mine shouldn't be old. I mean, that's weird. I mean, I just installed it, so why would it be? That's weird. .NET info. SDK's installed. My OS version is not 10, it's 11. I don't know what the heck we're seeing here, man. This thing doesn't know nothing. Unless, no, look. I don't know what it's seeing for OS version, but I'm telling you. Let's see. System information. Now we're gonna go. Oh, it is version. Oh wow, so Windows 11 is 10.022. Okay, Windows 11 is 10.10. Windows 11 is version 10. Interesting. Okay, well, it knows that much, right? Okay, but I still don't know why my .NET version is weird. Software environment. Let's see. I mean, I'm sure that's the right version of .NET. Why is it so old? I don't know how I even ended up with such an old version.
About everything that is related to the .NET.
His is 8.02.
And with that done, let's see how to create.
I'm curious now. How do I update this? Okay, update my .NET version. Command line to install upgrade .NET Core. Well, yeah. There is no .NET command. Yeah. Command line tool can't update itself via the command line. Now I've seen everything. What is the command for upgrading framework from .NET 2.0 to .NET 4.7? You should use the same approach used to install it in the first place. Well, that's fine. See, this is 8.0. Do I have to download it separate? Weird. Can I update it in .NET 9 preview? What? Now I can get ahead of it. I'll go with .NET 9. What is the latest? Web, cloud, Visual Studio Code. Download Visual Studio. I have Visual Studio Code. I don't need that. Download .NET SDK. I don't know. Let's download this. I want the latest, man. I don't know why it says I'm outdated, but I need to be updated. I don't need no stinking 6 point whatever the heck I have. I don't know when it got outdated, but or even how. Now I'm guessing there's a way to update it through Visual Studio or through Control Panel, because I'm guessing it's there. There's got to be a way. Probably it says, this thing says there's no way to do it through VS Code, but I don't worry about that. And I would think Windows Update even, you could probably update the software. I don't know. I just think that there's a way to get that up to 8.0 whatever. So 8.0.204 is actually 0.04 or 0.004 higher than the one he's got. So now I'll be ahead of him. Wow. I'll have better version, more updated version. I could have taken 9. I'm assuming it says, using Visual Studio, this release is only compatible with Visual Studio 2022. Using a different version? Now, I am using 2022, but I don't know if it's updated. It might not be updated. I mean, it's probably been a few months, but I still don't think I'm that far behind. All right. Now let's see if this changed any. Or I may have to restart this, but we'll see. .NET --version. We're good. We're caught up. Let's move on.
Our web project. Now, Visual Studio Code, and by having the .NET SDK installed, there are a couple of ways to create your .NET projects. And the first way is directly from the terminal. So here in the terminal, let me go ahead and just clean this very quickly, CLS. And one way that you can do this is by using direct. Now, with what template we have available here, what you have to do is...
Part of this is learning how the heck to do this stuff in Visual Studio Code.
And it's going to give you the full list, and let me expand this. This gives you the full list of all the possible types of applications that you can create with your local SDK installation. Right? So for instance, if you want to create a web project, you could choose this one template here. For instance, SVN core empty web, right? That will go ahead and create a fairly empty .NET web project. However, since we installed the C#.kit, there is another way that you can also do this. So let's go ahead and minimize the terminal over here. Let's actually close it for a moment. And what you can do is just use your command flex by going into your menu. Let's see how to configure Visual Studio Code that is in the box. So just type .NET --version, and that's going to print out the version of the .NET SDK that you have in your box. You can also do .NET --.
There's not really a good way to go forward, like 10 seconds.
About everything that is related to the .NET SDK.
I wanted, he did something here. I wanted to see how he did.
With that done, let's see how to create our web project.
So we're going to do a web project.
Now, Visual Studio Code, and by having the .NET SDK installed, there are a couple of ways to create.
So he's basically going to go over how to start a project up in VS Code. Okay, so
this very quickly, CLS. And one way that you can do this is by using directly the .NET CLI or command line interface. So all you have to do is just type .NET, and then you can type new, and this allows you to pick from a series of templates to create your project.
oh, whoops.
Now, with what
So if you type .NET new, dang it, stop it. .NET new. This is going to show you all the applications you could do. Now, interestingly enough, I have 5 options. I could do a Blazor web app, class library, console app, Windows Forms app, or WPF app. He's got like 1,000. Look, he's got like every kind of app you can imagine. So I must be missing some stuff because look, I've got 5 options of what I can install. That's it. And .NET new command creates a new project. Watch.
template we have available here, all you have to do is just put here list, you enter, and this is going to be...
Now maybe if I go .NET new list, because I didn't do that. Oh, never mind. Apparently .NET new has defaults, and then .NET new list gives you more. Never mind. I missed the list part. This is what you get for pausing stuff in the middle of what he's talking about.
Give you the full list, and let me expand this. This gives you the full list of all the...
So these are all the apps you can start. Now you would probably say .NET new web or .NET new API controller. And then it would create such and such project for you depending on what you're doing.
Possible types of applications that you can create with your...
And again, for me, these are just VS Code commands using C#, but I am trying to I'm gonna do, let's see, C#. Actually, let's call it .NET VS Code commands, and we got like the classics .NET -- version. I mean, you could probably get these, you know, if you just know. And then we got .NET. I don't know. There's probably even a way to figure out what the commands are. If you probably just type .NET, it'll probably give you all the commands you can do also. Turns all the possible projects you can create. Using .NET. I'm just putting down some notes because I probably will refer to this on occasion, at least for the first, you know, week of using VS Code with this. Again, I'm trying to do this versus Visual Studio. Visual Studio, you just go to File, New Project, boom, pops up a dialog. You put in the thing you want, done. You know, this is more command line based. So it's kind of getting used to how that works because I don't do a lot of command-based stuff, but it's probably good to know that because a lot of companies are probably going with the cheaper VS Code versus Visual Studio. Saves a bit bucks because Microsoft does charge quite a bit. All right, it's back to it. So this is why it takes more than 3 hours for me.
Local SDK installation.
I'm picking up my little tidbits.
Right? So for instance, if you want to create a web project, you could choose this one template here.
So really, I think we're just going to .NET new, type in one of these words. He's going to tell us what he wants because we're creating that project.
Since we installed the C# dev kit, there is another way that you can also do this. So let's go ahead and minimize the terminal over here. Let's actually close it for a moment. And what you can do is just use your command select by going into your menu over here. So just go into your menu, into View, Command Palette, right there. Which, by the way, you can easily access by just doing Ctrl-Shift-P, which I'm doing right now. Ctrl-Shift-P. We'll go ahead and open this command palette. It's super useful. There are many commands.
Control-Shift-P does what I just did.
Many things that Visual Studio Code can do. Now, in this command palette, all you have to do is just look for .NET, and then look for New Project, which is the first option over there. Click on that one, and this is going to go ahead and open up the list of available projects to install. So the list is not as comprehensive as with the .NET CLI, which is why I like to always know how to do things via the CLI and not just via these different menus. But here we have a handy way to do this, right? So what we want to do is to pick a template that lets us create a project for a recipe. Now we could go ahead and choose the ASP.NET Core Web API project template over here, which is what you would use if you're more experienced with Web API development. But if you're new, what I recommend is that you start with the ASP.NET Core empty template over here, because that will go ahead and create only the minimal set of files and configurations that are needed to get started, and then you can learn slowly how the different additional pieces are going to fit together, right? Like Lego pieces, you're going to learn how
so okay, so this guy, I'm going to tell you right now, if you watch his video, if you that the link again is underneath my screen, he's very knowledgeable, but I'm going to let you know, this has been what he's done on several steps already, and I'm only, what, 10 minutes into the thing. He says, do this. And then he goes down, he says, go down. You could select this, blah, blah. Then he goes on to say why you wouldn't select that. And then he goes back, but we're going to do this. So don't get ahead of him when he says, when you're seeing the mouse move down, and he says, go down to, you know, if you go down here, you could select this. Don't take that as select this. Take that as, wait a minute, what, but, waiting for the but, because he's been throwing some butts at you, and then he goes on to do something else. So
pieces, and what exactly is each of these pieces doing, right? As opposed to start with a bunch of files and configurations that you may not understand and have to start. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create a brand new application with ASP.NET Core empty web. Let's click on that one, and this is going to ask us to choose a directory where we want to create our project.
okay, what happened here?
Right? So I'm going to be using my
My menu stopped popping up. What the heck? Control Shift P. All right, Control Shift P. There you go. .NET. .NET. New project. There it is. Okay, so we got here. I think he's going with the empty, I believe. Because we're going to call it, well, let's call what it is. ASP.NET Core. I don't like the full course. It's got to be probably one word, huh? ASP.NET Core. Course. Let's just do that. Let's make it easy on me. Project will be created. Sure, why not? Create project, okay.
The projects directory here, you can use any directory in your machine. But what we want to do here is to create a folder that represents the project or the application that we're going to be working with. In this case, what we're doing is creating an API for a game store, and specifically the API to...
What I didn't do is follow along. It's like, we're just moving on. I gotta stop doing that. I get antsy and I start moving ahead of people. I gotta stop doing that. I got when you're doing a class, you gotta do it like the guy's doing it, because then things get out of whack. All right, so let's do what he's doing. So we got a project. This one, he did it different, because mine didn't actually pop up or do anything. It should have popped up. And let's close this. I'm gonna go here, and then I'm gonna go Visual Studio Code. Say new window. Okay, let's do that. That's a little better. We're not going to get a preloaded app. That's what I don't want. There we go. Probably get through this a lot faster if I stop trying to get ahead of him. .NET. There it is. All right.
And then look for new project, which is the first option over there. Click on that one. And this is going to go ahead and open up the list of available projects to install. So the list is not as comprehensive as with the .NET CLI, which is why I like to always know how to do things via the CLI and not just via these different menus. But here we have a handy way to do this, right? So what we want to do is to pick a template that lets us create a project for a recipe. Now we could go ahead and choose the ASP.NET Core Web API project template over here, which is what you would use if you're more experienced with Web API development. But if you're new, what I recommend is that you start with the ASP.NET Core empty template over here, because that will go ahead and create only the minimal set of files and configurations that are needed to get started. And then you can learn slowly how the different additional pieces are going to fit together, right? Like Lego pieces, you're going to learn how to stack each of these pieces and why exactly is each of these pieces doing, right? As opposed to start with a bunch of files and configurations that you may not understand at the start. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create a brand new application with ASP.NET Core empty web. Let's click on that one. And this is going to ask us to
click the wrong one.
Where we want to create our project. Right? So I'm going to be using my projects directory.
My mouse messes me up sometimes, I tell you. I have the sensitivity a little high, I think. Alright, so we're doing this one. There we go.
An API for a game store, and specifically the API to retrieve or to manage
Let's go down to
the
get
list of games, the video games in our game camp. So because of that, we're going to be creating a brand new project over here, brand new folder, sorry. It's going to be named Game Store. Okay, so I'm going to double click on that one. So we select the game store.
You call it Game Store, right? It's called Game Store.
On select folder down here, the folder, and And that is going to make it so that VS Code opens that directory, turning it into the workspace where we're going to be creating all of our projects. Now from here, the last thing that we have to do is the actual name for the project that's going to represent, in this case, our API, our Game Store API. So for that one, let's go ahead and type GameStore.api. Let's hit enter. And now VS Code opens, like I mentioned, our directory, our Game Store directory. And as you can see on the left side, we now have our brand new Game Store project created over there, alongside with a solution, which is the one that we can use to group the different projects that build our.
All right, so this is what C# looks like inside of Visual Studio Code, which, you know, for those of you who already did, I say, yeah, so no kidding. It's new to me because I've never used VS Code for this.
The first way is, of course, the one that we are seeing right here, right? This is known as the File Explorer, and this is showing all of the files, the physical files that compose our current project, right? But there's also this other Explorer that you can see down here, is known as the Solution Explorer, and this is more of a virtual view. And let me expand this a bit. This is a virtual view of the files that compose your application, where we're not going to see every single file. For instance, you don't see either the bin or obj directories over here. They are not going to be seen here, because this view is more like to help you manage the dependencies across different projects, and also to help you create files for C# files for your solution. We're going to see how this Solution Explorer is going to be very handy in several situations. But for the most part, we're going to be working mostly with the File Explorer.
So these are two different ways to see the same stuff, but this one kind of filters it out, gives it down to just what you're working with in your code. You're not going to see some of the hidden stuff, the stuff that's typically not visible for a project when you're normally working, because you wouldn't normally see these. This is stuff where things are built and deployed and provided to the application. This is your application stuff specifically.
And these few lines of code that you can see here are the very first lines that execute when you run your application. So this is the code.
Geez, they even put a hello world in there. Funny.
And the whole purpose of these lines here is to really create an instance.
Classic starter point. You don't say, well, we're not even going to have you write that. I mean, this thing is, you know, you should know some C#, but they're showing you how it sets up here.
Of your application. Now, what is the purpose of this host? Well, the purpose is really to represent or to introduce an HTTP server implementation for your app, so that you can start listening for HTTP requests. It also stands up a bunch of middleware components, login services, dependency injection services, configuration services, a bunch of services that we're going to be talking about across this tutorial. And then you can configure over here, if we expand this, between these two lines, you could go ahead and always just type builder dot, and this is going to give you a chance to go ahead and configure a series of services depending on your needs, right? By default, as you can see, there's nothing in there. We're going to be.
This is just showing you that you can go in here and do stuff, set it up, build it, set it up.
Now, when you actually go ahead and invoke build over here,
he's just showing you what these different parts are.
And that's going to configure or set up a few things. Like, for instance, it's going to go ahead and set up Kestrel as your in-process web server that comes in with Estimate Core. It also loads configurations from a few other files we're going to be talking about, and also configurations for environment variables, command line arguments, and many other configuration sources. It is also going to allow us to send the login output into the console that we can see in the terminal. All right? And so after we have this instance of app ready, then we go into what we know as the configuration of the request pipeline. So all of these lines, and let me just...
He's just telling you what these things are doing. The build kind of sets up, puts all the parts and bits in place of things that work.
What is going to happen when requests come in? How should we handle those requests, right? And right now, as you can see, really all we have here is...
And the map, I guess, like I said, he explains all this while you're doing it. I'm kind of listening, trying to learn it. I'm just trying to see what these functions and methods are doing for an API application.
This lambda expression that you can see here, this is known as a handler. It just replies with a hello world. That's all it is doing right now. Very, very simple. But you can use this app object also to do a bunch of things. Like if you just type app here, you will see that there are a bunch of things that you can do to modify what happens when these requests come in, right? That's done as a request pipeline. And again, we're going to see how to take advantage of this app object across...
He's just explaining the basics of an API of the setup here.
Let's take a quick look at the other files that are available here.
So we're going to talk about other things here quick.
Is known as the project file. this GameStore.api.csv.
So this is another
That's
one you
this file.
probably wouldn't
Now
see
this is
in the
not as a
solution.
project
See,
file. This one defines
there
the
is no
details
project
that
file.
is
You don't
what
normally
type of
edit
project
this
you have here.
while
And you can see at
you're
the very top here,
developing. That's
we're going
not
to see
your.
the SDK micros.net.
This is something that kind of gets edited as, or this gets
And we
edited
want by
as you
default
go.
to import a bunch of libraries
It's kind
and
of
dependencies that are
dynamic and adding
specific for your
objects and
project.
stuff that goes
There are
into the
many other
project
types of
file.
projects that you can create with .NET, but in this case we're focused only on web projects. And then if we go down here, we're going to see that we have our target framework. So in this case, it says .NET 8.0. That means that we have access to all of the APIs that are available in version
He said
8
he did
of
it dot, the
.NET
dot.
SDK,
I typed
right?
dot.
So you have a lower version, it means that you have access to likely less APIs. You have a higher version, you have access to newer APIs, right? By the time that I'm recording this, the version of the SDK that I'm using is version 8, so that's why it defaults to .NET 8.0, right? And then there are also configurations for other C# features that I'm not going to dive into right now. But another thing that you're going to notice in this CS proc as we go through the tutorial is that this is where we're going to be declaring all of the dependencies or other libraries that we may want to use to take advantage of their functionalities without having to write our own code. We're going to see that as we go across the tutorial.
So he says we're putting
Let's go
dependencies and
back
stuff
into
in here,
our
which is
script.
interesting.
And now
You
let's
can
go
do
to
that same
our
thing through the
AppSync.json. Now,
dependencies
we have AppSync.json,
folder,
that's
usually in
the
Visual
developer
Studio,
So these are the
but he's
files
going to be
that
doing
are
it through the
only
project
used
file, I
for
guess.
configurations, right? So this is where
Dependencies is
you
kind of a
put
reference to the
everything
project
that
file
should not be
anyway, so when you make
hard-coded
changes here, you end
into
up
your
adding them
code base,
here.
but more
See
represents a set of
frameworks.
configurations that could change across environments, right? So for instance, right now we already have some configurations for logging, right?
So you got some logging
But
stuff in
we
the
also have
JSON.
AppSync.development
App
JSON
settings
that we
is
could
pretty
use
common.
if
You
we
got an
wanted
app
to,
settings here
so
too.
that it
This is
only
the same
works in
file.
the development
Just like I said,
environment, so in
some
your
things
box.
show up in
But
solutions
these
that don't
settings
show
will
up
not be
in
used
the
as you move into
in
production.
Visual. Like I say, the
Production,
reason I'm
you
pointing
could
these out
use
at all,
.NET
he's not,
JSON, or you're
is
going
in
to
Visual
use
Studio,
other set
you
of configurations
typically see
from
only
other
this,
sources. So we're going to
unless
be talking
you
about those
have it show
configurations
all
later on.
files, and then some of these other
Right?
hidden items will show up.
Now, another file that we have here is under properties. There's this launch series.json file. Let me collapse this for a moment. Now, the main purpose of this launch series.json is to provide you what we know as profiles, right? And we have two profiles here. We have an HTTP profile, and down here we have an HTTPS profile. Now, these profiles provide you with some configurations only for development. So this is just for local development that kind of impact the way that your application is going to run in your box. For instance, this setting here states that the browser should open anytime you start debugging your application. And this one here is the URL that's going to be assigned for your application when you start. This URL, by the way, this board over here is automatically generated, so you will likely get a different one when you create your application. There's also something like environment variables, as you can see here. This environment variable, ASP.NET Core environment, is a well-known
He talks really fast.
variable
You gotta really watch. He'll zip right through something. You won't even know he did it.
Not in a production environment, right? And so nothing in this file is going to be available in production.
At least he's
all of this goes away, and
not
you
difficult to
get
understand
automatic
necessarily. Just
so
talks really
all of
fast.
this is really meant for local development. Now, just that you have HTTP, if you want
So
to
if you're one of those
HTTPS,
people
you
who
can
likes
take
to turn up
advantage
the
of
speed,
HTTPS
we turn it
profile,
at
which is going to
1.5.
provide
It
another
sounds like
URL
you're
over here, as you can
listening
see.
to
This will be the URL
the chipmunks.
for HTTPS access. Alright? Now, what do we have here? Well, we have our bin and OBJ.
I'm not big at
database,
turning up the
which is
speed
really
when I'm watching
our
stuff, but
temporary files.
some people do it.
OBJ is where we're going to have our intermediate files as we go into the compilation process, and later in bin is where we're going to have the final DLLs or assemblies for our.
Yeah, the bin is where when you do your build, that's where your DLL for your project end up. And a lot of times that's what you deploy to websites and stuff. But a lot of times when you check that stuff in and then you build a build using pipelines, it knows to grab the file that you're actually using from the bin folder instead of that, or you do a build during and it'll just grab the bin that it or the DLL that it creates and deploy it. So it depends on how you go. I think a lot of people like to do the build on so it can check to see that there's using the stuff that it has, because you usually don't check in your own personal local like reference files. That stuff's already in the check-in location, and then when it does a build, it makes sure that everything works with what it has. So it's more secure that way, or more safe.
We have our DLL producer.
So he's doing the same thing. He's just going over what I just did, where he's going to show you what's in the Solution Explorer.
Once again, back into our File Explorer, into bin. Let me expand this a bit. There's bin debug, because we're in the debug configuration, and net 8.0 because that is the framework that we're targeting. We're going to see that we have our GameStore.api.deb. So that represents the actual assembly of the compiled version of our application. Okay? And so yeah, and that's one way to do it. But like everything else, I recommend that you also know how to do this from the command line, CLI. And so to do that, what I'm going to do is just click on this plus sign over here to open a brand new terminal, plus. And then perhaps I'm going to delete the other one. I'm going to click on this delete over there. And then to build your project, all you have to do really is just type .NET, so .NET CLI, and then build.
Oh, magnifying.
That's going to go ahead and build whatever solution or project.
Well, he did say Control plus sign should take me to the terminal, and I typed Control plus, and all I did was zoom in. So I don't know what the terminal is. Control. Oh, it's Control. Oh, it is Control plus tilde. So it's not Control plus tilde. It's Control tilde. It's funny because his little example earlier just showed Control plus. It did not say. I mean, he said tilde, but when he said Control plus tilde, I didn't see a tilde. There was no tilde there. At least if it was super small or something. And I didn't see it, and I'm like, that's Control plus. But it's not Control plus. The plus is, you know, you're not really typing the plus. I know, this is such tiddlywink stuff that I point out.
Right now, I am at the root at Kickstarter. It builds the solution Kickstarter SLN that includes the project that I'm working on right now.
You know
So
what?
that produces
His the closed captioning on here is driving me nuts. Let's turn that off.
the DLL. And one last way to do it, if you wanted to do, is to by using Control Shift B, which is going to tie into the native VS Code integration into what we know as build tasks, right? So as you can see, it already knows that our build task is .NET Build, so you can just click there, and that's going to go ahead and kick off the build process, right? So many ways to do it, so you can choose whatever works best for you. Now, how do we actually go ahead and run the application? Right now,
So you say Control Shift build, Control Shift B. This will just build what it is. It's probably going to work just fine. Doesn't have anything in it. It's near empty application. But it creates the objects and stuff that you need in order to, like I said, you should. This probably has something in it now. Nope, it doesn't. How come mine doesn't have any objects in it? Oh, there it is. It just hadn't loaded yet. So as soon as I did the build, all these bits, these DLLs, XEs, whatever, were created, and now they're sitting in the bin folder ready for, you know, usage and when you run the app.
we know how to build it, but how do we run it? It's actually very straightforward.
Feels like it's very basic stuff, but again, for me, using Visual Studio Code is, you know, if I knew how to do all this stuff in VS Code already, like I had developed regular C# or framework apps in VS Code, I would probably go, all right, let's skip all this. But I don't know because I've never used it. VS Code is a whole new thing for me. I mean, since I started doing React and I was doing it a little bit at my last company, but it was a whole new thing to me. Now it's becoming so much more familiar because I'm using it for all these different apps.
Right? So you want to pick C# here, right? And now you have to pick what is going to be your configuration that you want to work. Like I mentioned before, in .json we have two profiles, one for HTTP
always
and
forget,
one for HTTPS. And there is also the concept of the
The thing is, you have to be in the right window for this stuff to do its thing.
So let's just go ahead and click on the default configuration. And now VS Code is going to go ahead and build the project, and then it's going to kick off the debugger with a debugger attached into the application. And as you can see, it even went ahead and opened my browser. And let me expand this for a moment. Here, so .NET CLI, and then build. That's going to work.
So we got .NET. What do you type? .NET CLI? You do .NET? .NET CLI. Good. Does that work? Or do I have to type .NET? I don't know what he has here.
Application. Okay, so that's it really for the file that we have in the application. Let me collapse this, close this, and close that. Now, how do we actually, for local development, that kind of impact where we're going to have our intermediate files as we go in API, right click on build, and that's going to go ahead and kick off the build process based on the
So we already
solution
did that.
that you have currently, right? And as you can see right here,
So you can actually go
we
here
have
and just
our
click build.
DLL producer. As it says right here, Kickstarter.api.dll, where
Yes,
it's
I thought he
actually
said.
leading, where if we go once again back into our File Explorer, into bin, let me expand this a bit.
Oh,
There's
it builds
bin
from the Solution
debug,
Explorer.
because we're in the debug configuration, and net 80 because that is the framework that we're targeting. we're going to see that we have our GameStar.api.view. So that represents the actual assembly of the compiled version of our application. Okay? And so, yeah, and that's one way to do it. But like everything else, I recommend that you also know how to do this from the command line, CLI. And so to do that, what I'm going to do is just click on this plus sign over here to open a brand new terminal, plus. And then perhaps I'm going to delete the other one. I'm going to click on this delete over there. And then to build your project, all you have to do really is just type .NET, so .NET CLI, and then build. That's and build whatever solution or project you are in. So since right now I am at the root at GameStore, it builds the solution GameStore SLN that includes the project that I'm working on right now. Okay, so that produces the DLL. And one last way to do it, if you wanted to do, is to by using Control-Shift-B. Control-Shift-B.
So there's three ways to build. Building on the right click here, Control-Shift-B, or the .NET build on the bottom. So there's a lot of ways. I think the most common way that I ever did builds in Visual Studio was to use the app. I'd right click on it, build. But I'm trying to learn these terminal commands.
Now, how do we actually go ahead and run the application? Right now we know how to build it, but how do we run it? It's actually very straightforward. Easiest way to do it is by just hitting the F5 key. So if you just hit F5, that's going to go ahead and open up this dialog that you can see here, asking you to choose what is going to be the debugger for your application, right? Because this is going to actually go in.
All right, you don't have an extension for debugging JSON. Probably shouldn't be in that page then. What is he on? So I just need to go here and go F5. There we go. Somehow if you're on the wrong file, sometimes it won't do it. So F5 will pop this up. So he got what do I want? Because he has Chrome and Edge set up.
Into a debug session, not just run the application, but into a debug session. Now, of course, we're working with a C# application, right? So you want to pick C# here, right? And now you have to pick what is going to be your configuration that you want to work with. Like I mentioned before, in Logitech.json we have two profiles, one for HTTP and one for HTTPS. And there is also the concept of the default configuration, which is going to be really the HTTP configuration. So let's just go ahead and click on the default configuration. And now VS Code is going to go ahead and build the project.
So it's going to run it, build it, and pop it out.
Debugger with a debugger attached into the application. And as you can see, it even went ahead and opened my browser. And let me expand this for a moment. It opened
Hello world.
And it went into executing a GET request into the API, right? And as you remember, if you go back into VS Code, what happens if somebody executes a GET request? We go to program.cs, and then for a moment, we're expected to return a hello world. And because of that, that's what we're seeing in the browser right now. You're returning hello world. Notice that we are right now at the host and port that was specified in launch settings.json, right? So localhost 5274 would match what we have set in properties launch settings.json. It's going to be up here. Localhost 5274, right? So that's what got launched.
Mine is 5290, but whatever.
But
His is
like I mentioned,
5274.
This is not just running the application, it's actually inside a debug session. And how can we tell that we are actually in a debug session though? Let me show you that. So
This is definitely different. I mean, just basically, it just seems kind of odd because you're doing, I mean, this runs it in a browser. It's an API, right? Which is different because I haven't done ASP.NET APIs.
Over here, perhaps, over there, which is where we are configuring our GET request and later executing our hello world lambda over there. So now if I hit F5 once again, VS Code is going to build the project and attaches the debugger into the application. And as you can see, this time we actually stop over here in the breakpoint, line 5. And from here, we can go ahead if we wanted to and start evaluating the different objects that are live now in the application, right? So we could go ahead and hover over app, for instance, and that's going to give us the values of the different objects that are available right now.
He's got a nice,
from ASP.NET Core, right? The
I don't know, C#.NET
and not just that,
tool that highlights the line.
The builder, the app on the left side, we could add watches. We could check out the goal stack also if we wanted
Do I have to stop it?
But indeed, we are in a debugging session. And to continue, all you have to do is just click over there, over here, click on that play button, and that's going to continue the execution. Now this opens up the browser once again, browsing into the root of the API.
How do you break?
The breakpoint once again, and that is because now we are inside the Lambda.
He's getting ahead of me. All right, so I'm trying to figure out how do I stop the project. If I want to, I can pause the project right here. Oh, is that the stop? Stop. There we go. Now I'm gonna hit F5. It's gonna run it, build it back up. Now I have a breakpoint. He's just showing me how to use the breakpoints in here. Oh, wait, there we go. We highlight, and then that's not even the right thing. And then we're gonna go. I think was it F10? Is it F10 or F11 here? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, well, it's F10 is Visual Studio. I don't know what F11 is. Okay, F10 skips. F10 does the whole thing. F11 steps into. So let's go back up here. Oh, you can't drag and drop that. So let's set his next statement. Nope, no set his next statement allowed. So F10 is step over, step through. Step 11 is step into. So we're going to do this, and we're going to try this again. Oh, okay. Oh, it ran the first part, which just gets you to the path, and then what is it going to do? Huh, interesting. No, I don't know what I just... Hello world. Okay, somehow... Oh, there you go. I'm learning some interesting things. Apparently, look, I hit F11 here. It goes up. I know it says hit F11, but this full screen takes up literally the full screen. There's not even a menu. There's nothing. It's just gone. So if you don't remember the F11, you're not getting out of this. You're like, how do I get out of this?
That executes when the actual request lands, right? The first time it executed because we were booting or starting up the application, and now we actually click the get endpoint and we are invoking this hello world lambda. Okay, so I'll just click on play once again, and back in the browser, we're going to see that the hello world once again.
Wait, did a play button come up here?
So that's
I didn't see the play button.
Easily start debugging.
So let's stop it. I want to see the play button. I don't know why I didn't see a play button before. Maybe because I wasn't looking.
In my case, like, you don't need to be debugging all the time because it can be a bit time consuming if you keep doing that over and over. So what you can
there's a play button. Check it out.
Here, stop my debugging session. What you can do is either go back.
F10 is step over, F11 is into. Yeah, that's right.
And you can right click.
And Shift 11 is step out.
Right here. You can go ahead and say debug, and then you could do start without debugging. Right, start without debugging. So this is going to start your application without any debugging support. Notice that it was way faster. Still opens the browser, but it was way faster, right? Or another thing that you can do, right? Let me stop this once again. Stop that. Which is going to be also my favorite here. Is going to be by using the terminal directly. So if we collapse this for a moment, and let me expand my terminal. Going to call these three dots and into terminal over here. I'll kill this terminal back into this simpler one. Okay, and I'm going to switch into GameStore.api, which is the location of the actual API that we have created. Now just type .NET Run. By doing that, once again, I'm running the application, right? But there's no debugger attached, and we're going to see in nicer colors the logs that are going to pop up out of the application, and we can clearly see where it is that we are hosting the application, localhost 5274. So by being here, I can once again go back to the browser, just refresh this, and again it's going to.
So he's showing you that you can actually do this without. If you want to just build it and not get into a debugger, you can go. Let's see. What do you say? CD game store .api. Is that a thing? It is. Then you just say .NET run and builds it. So when it's building and running it, notice it just kind of gives you a couple of basic info bits, and then it pops up a dot. Wait, where'd it go? It's not, did it pop it up here? Where'd it do with it? Must have popped it up here. I didn't see it pop up. Okay, so yeah, so we just ran it. It was very quick. It did its thing, and now you're not in a debugger though. So I don't know how you stop it. Clear copy, new split, clear kill terminal. I don't know.
right? And so now that we understand how to create our project and how to build and run it, let's now switch into slides to understand much better what exactly is a REST API. In this
So
section,
he's going to do a
we'll
little
learn
demo
what
now
a
of
REST
what
API
REST
is
APIs are. I
and
mean,
how it relates
I kind of
to
know, but
modern client applications. To understand what a REST API is, start by thinking about all these apps you have in your phone, like your weather app,
so
LinkedIn,
he's kind of going
or
over. This is just
Spotify.
like educational
These
stuff you're not
apps use
actually
a ton
doing
of
at the
data,
moment.
like the
I'm
latest
trying to figure
weather
out how you stop
information, the
this
latest post in your LinkedIn feed, or
because
the
there's not a
hundreds of songs
stop
in your
anymore
favorite
because you're
playlists.
not in
However, that data can't live in your phone, which is what we know as a client. Because it will be way too much data to store in your device,
stop.
you want fresh data all the time anyways.
I don't know how to kill this. Do I
So
just
the
kill
data
the
has to come from
terminal?
somewhere. And that somewhere is going to be some sort of server computer that usually lives somewhere in the internet cloud. But how can these apps talk to that server in the cloud to retrieve the data? Well, by using an API.
I banish all negativity and pop-ups.
Okay, so it's Control C. Application start, press Control. Oh, there it is. Control C to shut down. Read the messages, man. Read the messages. Got to get over that. Bad habits.
API stands for Application Programming Interface, and it's how a service defines the functions it provides to clients. So, for instance, going back to the Spotify example, the Spotify Cloud Service could define an API with two functions. A get recent songs function that receives the username as a parameter and that returns the 10 most recent songs for a specified user. And there could also be a play song function that receives the song name as a parameter and that returns the stream for that song so that a client can play it. Like this, there could be dozens or hundreds of other functions offered by the service that clients can use to interact with it. So, an API helps clients communicate what they want to the service so it can understand and fulfill the request. REST
So
stands for Representation
here's talking about what an
State
API is. Basically, an
Transfer,
API,
and it
application
defines a set
programming
of guiding
interface. I mean,
principles
most
that
again,
includes
I would just
definitions on
recommend going and
how an
check it out.
API
He has
works.
slides. He's pointing it
We
out.
won't dive into
What
each
all
of
these
these
things
principles
are.
in
It's
this
essentially
tutorial,
just a way
but
to
important
make
thing to
calls
know
to
is
a
that with
service
REST, you can build
that
APIs that are
exposes some
scalable,
functions, methods,
flexible,
whatever.
and
You
independent
make the
of the
calls to
technology
those
being
with your
used
own
on the client
code
and
because
the
it's
server.
that's the idea is that if
So,
they make those
going
available
back to
to
the
you,
original question,
you can call from
a
another
REST
app and
or
just say,
RESTful
hey, give me these
API
Spotify
is one
connecting
that
points, and
conforms
it'll
to the rules
return
of the
whatever those
network
functions and
style.
methods provide.
Now,
But
the main
obviously,
reason why we want to stand up a REST API is so that our clients can interact
but
with
obviously,
the
it's
data
only
that
going to
it
be the ones they
manages.
provide. So if they only give you
But
two,
how do
you only
they
can only
actually
make two
use that
calls to
data?
it.
Well, for this, it's good to first understand the concept of a resource in a REST API. In a REST API, a resource is any object, document, or thing
And
that
like I
the
say, it's just
API can
redundant for me
receive
to put it on the
from or
screen.
send
I
to
mean,
clients.
it's on YouTube.
For
I have the
instance,
screen
in
there,
our game store
and I'm
application,
just kind of
the
watching
main
it.
resource is
So at
simply
least until we
our
get into more
games.
coding,
That's what
he's
clients
just
want to
explaining what
play
this
and
is, and
interact
I
with.
am learning it.
But
So
in
I
other
feel like it's
applications,
important
like
that
the
I,
Spotify example, one
you
of the
know, that I
resources
kind of
could
see what
be
he's
the
got to say.
songs. And in the LinkedIn
I'm
example,
putting it over
one
here
resource could be the music,
because I don't know
and
how long
another
this
one
this
the
segment
LinkedIn post.
has. Looks like it's got a little bit
These
of meat to
resources
it.
could
So
be hosted on
he's
some
only going to
domain,
have a little bit more before he goes to
which could
coding
be
though.
a public domain, an intranet location, or it could be just your dev box. And they can be accessed either via the HTTP protocol or the HTTPS protocol, which is a must in public environments. So when you combine all these, you get what we know as a Uniform Resource Identifier, or URI. And that is what your clients will use to identify and reach the resources of a REST API. There could be more parts to this URI, but these are the essential elements. Now, how do you actually interact with a REST API? Well, just like with traditional web pages, when clients want to request something from the servers, they will send an HTTP request using the resource URI to the server, and then the server will send back a response. However, in REST APIs, these requests and responses will look a bit different depending on the specific HTTP method used to call it. The most common methods are post, which creates new resources, get, which retrieves the representation or state of the resource, put, which updates an existing resource, and delete, which deletes a resource. So these methods allow you to create, read, update, and delete resources, and therefore they are also commonly known as CRUD operations. There are other methods.
CRUD operations. He says it's commonly known as CRUD operations. I did not know that was not common to me. I just create, read, update, and delete. So basically, you're just going in, you make a call, it returns it back. And if you send one of those things, you send a get, you send a post, a delete, it's going to respond accordingly.
The first part of this response is the status,
200, which is the common, everything's okay. That much I knew.
Was a success. There are many other HTTP status codes that a REST API will send back.
It's funny, the Net Ninja, he did a game thing too.
The next part is the body, which contains the list of games in this case. Notice that this body is not HTML, but instead the format of the response is known as JSON.
JSON, yep.
JavaScript object notation.
Usually when you get data back in this format, it's JSON. I used to think it was XML, so that goes to show what I knew. But it's kind of sort of similar, but there's no tags. See, it's just the name of the object and what corresponds to it. Just brackets and text. No tags.
But this time, you would append the resource identifier at the end, number 1 in this case. The server will respond with the state of the game with that identifier, assuming it's able to find the game. To create a game, the client can send post requests, once again using the game's resource URI. But this time, it needs to specify the desired resource state.
I still don't understand what a REST API is. I mean, I know that's what we're working with, but why is it a REST API versus a...
The server will usually reply with a 201 create.
I should probably watch that again. I mean, it's all about, somebody's going to ask you, so what's a REST API? And you're going to go... It's like when you're making communications to a server and you calling it. I don't know. That's just an API. To me, an API is what they're talking about. A REST API, how is that different? I'm going to go back. Because that's what matters to me. A lot of this other stuff, I understand how it works, but why is it called a REST API?
But how can these apps talk to that server?
I know what an API is.
In this section, you will learn what a REST API is and how it relates to modern client applications. To understand what a REST API is, start by thinking about all these apps you have in your phone, like your weather app.
See, they just ask how it communicates.
Or Spotify.
But what makes it a REST? Why isn't it just an API or a web API? Why does it have to be a REST API?
Hundreds of songs in your favorite playlists. However, that data can't live in your phone, which is what we know as a client, because it will be way too much data to store in your device, and you want fresh data all the time anyways. So the data has to come from somewhere, and that somewhere is going to be some sort of server computer that usually lives somewhere in the internet cloud. But how can these apps talk to that server?
So am I being thick? It's not really saying. I mean, what he's talking about is an API or web API.
API stands for Application Programming Interface.
See, he's just talking about an API is. I know what an API is and a web API. Web API is just one that's hosted on a web server, and you're making a call from an application. I don't know what the difference is. I mean, you can have an API that's not hosted on a web server that you have, in-house or something. But even then, you're kind of still. But you can make a call over a network to another application that's maybe on another server. Then there's a web API, which is only through the internet service. But again, it's not really explaining why it's called a REST API.
Other functions offered by the service that clients can use to interact with it. So
Okay, here we go.
an
This,
API
the
that
next
helps
page talks
clients
about, or the next thing he
communicate what
talks
they
about is
want
REST.
to the service so it can understand and fulfill the request. REST stands for Representational State Transfer, and it defines a set of guiding principles
REST.
that impose conditions on how an API should be.
Representational state
We won't
transfer.
dive into each of these principles in this tutorial, but the important thing to know is that thanks to them, you can build APIs that are scalable, flexible, and independent of the technology being used on the client and the server. So, going back to the original question, a REST or RESTful API is one that conforms to the REST architectural style. Now, the main reason why we want to stand up a REST API is so that our clients can interact with the data that it manages. But how do they actually reach that data? Well, for this, it's good to first understand the concept of a resource in a REST API. In a REST API, a resource is any object, document, or thing that the API can receive from or send to clients.
Okay, well,
For instance, in our game store,
so essentially it's just
the main
a
resource is going to be our games.
format
That's what
for
clients
calling
want to query and
APIs.
modify. But in other applications,
That's what it sounds
like
like.
the Spotify example, one of the resources could be the songs. And in the LinkedIn example, one resource could be the users, and another one, the LinkedIn posts. These resources will be hosted on some domain, which could be a public domain, an intranet location, or it could
All right,
be
so he already
just
went
your
over this.
endpoint.
Let's go on.
But this time it includes the resource state, just like in the post scenario.
So it's state.
Server
It's a
will completely
stateful
replace the state
thing.
of
So it's
game
going to be pull it
associated
in,
with
hold your
specified
state, hold the
identifier
data, interact with
with
the
a new
data,
state,
but you're using it through
and
state
will typically
objects.
respond only with a 204 no content status code. Finally, to delete an existing game, the client sends a delete request to the URI that identifies the game to delete, and after deleting the resource, the server will usually respond with a 204 no content status code. So, in summary, your complete games REST API would look like this, and should offer all the support that your clients expect from a modern backend. Let's now jump back into the code to see how to implement this REST API in ASP.NET.
So what they're saying here in those things, I mean, I skipped over it. So the only difference is this is getting all the games. This gets a specific game. So one is representational of a specific ID or some other thing that tells it what to get. Post is saying we're putting all of these items into the games directory. Put is we're going to change this one. We're going to make an alteration to this one item or well, a create object. So, and then games delete. Obviously, we're only deleting a particular one. So this is I think this is a create. This is a update, and this is a delete. Well, obviously delete. Post. I believe if I remember it correctly. If I remember it correctly, that's this is a create, which we're just basically adding another object into this game's object, and we're posting it back, and now it's part of the solution.
Before we start implementing our .NET REST API, we need to find a better way to interact with it.
Probably make more sense in a
That's
lot of ways
because
and how
the
these all work,
browser is
and
not really designed
getting
for
to know the
this, but you
difference
can only do
to
some parts of the
post and
browser.
put and how they work.
So
And
instead of using the browser, what we're going to do is find another way by using directly Visual Studio Code to talk to the API. And let me show you how that works. So back in VS Code,
all right, so we're gonna get back into
Explorer,
this.
let's go ahead and just right click on our project folder, GameStore.api in this case. Let's do new file, and let's name this file games.http. The name of the file doesn't really matter, what matters is the extension. And this file is recognized by the extension that we installed before, this one called REST Client. That extension allows us to write statements directly in this file that very quickly allow us to interact with the API. So for instance, remember that we have our hello world declared over here, right? So far, this is all we have. How do we interact with that? Well, all you have to do here really is just say get, because it's going to be a get request, and then you want to specify the host and port of our running API. So to figure that out, remember that you can always go into launch.json, look at your HTTP profile, this profile over here, HTTP, and here is your application URL. So I'm going to copy this, close that, I'll just paste it over there, and now we are pretty much ready to talk to the API.
So he's just telling you how do you get the connection to connect to the. Uh, we're going to go to HTTP here. We're going to grab the same path that he's got there. He takes this little puppy here and he copies it and just puts it into our new file. This just allows us to talk to the API, so now we can make calls and such that would allow us to do that.
So how that works? So let me collapse this. Let me open my terminal. I'll do Control J to open my terminal here. I'll switch into Kickstarter. Now just do it. Right? Remember that there are many ways to run your application. This is just the way that I like to do so. So now what I can do, and I'm going to collapse this for a bit. What I can do now is just right click over here where I have declared this line 1. I'll just right click. And I'll use this option here that says send request. Click on that one. And on the right side, I'm going to collapse the terminal. You can see that we get a response right away, including the hello world.
Did he actually run it or build it? Did he say?
To write statements directly in this file that very quickly allow us to interact.
They need to have a way you can skip forward like 2 seconds or 10 seconds or something.
Our hello world declared over here, right? So far,
because when you have a really big file,
all you have to do here
it's hard to
just say get, because it's going to be a get request, and then we want to specify the host and port of our running API. So our hello world declared over here, right? So far, this is all we have. How do we interact with that? Well, all you have to do here really is just say get, because it's going to be a get request, and then we want to specify the host and port of our running API. So let me collapse this. Let me open my terminal. I'll do Control J to open my terminal.
Is he running it or building it?
I'll switch into Kickstarter.api, and I'll just do .NET Run. Right? Remember that there are many ways to
run
the
it is run.
application.
Okay.
This is just the way that I like to do so.
He does it
now
from.
What I can do, and I'm going to
I don't know.
What I can do
I don't know why he does
is
it that way.
right click over here where I have declared this line 1. I'll just right click, and I'll use this
Let's
option
go do
here
it
that
this
says
way.
send request. Send request. Click on that one, and on the right side, I'm going to collapse the terminal. You can see that we get a response right away, including the hello world that we were already expecting. We were seeing before in the browser. Now we're seeing it here. And not only that, we can also see the status code of the response at our hello world declared over here, right? So far, this is all we have.
So hard to go back on this.
Well,
It's
all you have to
too.
do here really
It's
is
not
just
a good
say
way. If I want to go back to see the previous
get
thing.
request, and then we want to specify the host and port of our running API. So to figure that out, remember that you can always go into launch.json, look at your HTTP profile, this profile over here, HTTP, and here API, and I'll just do .NET Run. Right? Remember that there are many ways to run your application. This is just the way that I
Talk so fast and he
so
goes through
now
it.
what I can do, and I'm going to
Right.
collapse this for a bit. What I can do now is just right click over here where I have declared this line 1. I'll just right click, and I'll use this option here that says send request. Send request. Click on that one, and on the right side, I'm going to collapse the terminal. You can see that we get a response right away, including the hello world that we were already expecting. We were seeing before in the browser. Now,
All right, I said send request. It did not pop that up. Is it here? Nope. Nope, don't want more. Don't want more. Go away. Let's try again. Right click. Send request. Something popped up here. What is that? Huh. Mine is not doing what his did. His pops up something here, but mine is not doing that. Let's try this again. I gotta get down this basic navigation stuff. I had to go through the same thing when I did React. You know, just learning how to do basic React stuff here. It's like, where? Stop it. Now where'd my little side menu go? There it is. You're looking at me going, this guy does not know what he's doing. You're right. Let's see, game store dot API. And he just said .NET run. Let's do that. Let's see if that's different from what I saw. Maybe I can't do it as a build. When I did F5, it did it as a build. So we're gonna go here and then we're gonna say send request. Ah, there it is. See, I did it wrong. Now I know what I'm doing. And that sounds I'm getting there. I'm picking things up slowly but surely. I do say so. We're going to get somewhere eventually.
Now we're sitting here, and not only that, we can also see the status code of the response and a few other details about this response. And so you can also go here. I mean, there is this send request link over there that you can always go ahead and click. It's going to have the same effect.
Oh,
I
well,
have
see,
found that
just click there.
at the time that I'm recording this link is not super reliable, so sometimes it may not work. So that's why I prefer to do it the other way.
Oh,
Another way to do it is
said
also
sometimes
to
that doesn't work.
Control Alt R in Windows at least. Control Alt R is going to go ahead and execute the request for you. So as you can see, this is a much better way to interact with the API. But one problem that we still have is that anytime we start a debugging session, the browser is still going to.
I don't know. Control R doesn't seem to work. It says you can, but I'm not seeing
my
it.
terminal over here. I'm going to do
No.
Control C to start the
So
process.
that's not
Press
reliable.
stop. Now I'm going to do F5 to start a debugging session. And what's going to happen is that, of course, it builds and the breakpoint is being hit. I'm going to remove this breakpoint. And then the browser opens again, right? So this is not something that I like because we're not going to be doing anything with the browser. And even in a debugging session, I'd like to just stay within VS Code. So how to prevent the browser from opening? So let's go back to VS Code and let's stop this debugging session. What we can do is just go now to Control-Shift-E to open my
Control-Shift-E.
and then I'll go into my launch settings.json file, right? And so in this file, all you have to do is just switch launch browser from true to false.
So if you don't want the browser, he's saying we don't need it for what we're doing. So
right? We're not going to be using
he's saying turn this off.
but just in case, let's switch it in both sides. Alright? And just by doing that, if I hit F5 once again, hit F5, you're going to notice that we just remain within VS Code. And if I want to, I can go and just close this, and I can go ahead and right-click in my case at HTTP and send a request, right? Which now is sending the request that we are in the context of a debugging session, which is going to be super handy in many occasions.
So basically,
So,
when
yeah,
we're
so let's
manipulating
stop
it,
this,
we don't need to do.
And this. Let's go back to this for Control-Shift.
If you
So
if you
now
turn
it's
off the
time to
browser, it
start
won't
the
launch, and you
implementation
can use
of our
this
API.
instead. So you'll be able to
But there's
access
one thing
here.
that we're missing so far.
So I don't need this. I can click this, and we're good. Okay.
And that is a way to represent.
Now we're in a debug
the
state
resources
versus
that
when I
we're
did
going
it
to
with
be
the run.
managing in this API, right? Like we said, we're going to be managing games, video games, right? It's a catalog of video games that we don't have a way to represent those. If you
I do like that he's
remember
having you set up here, because if you don't know Visual Studio Code like me,
we have
just
already
getting all that set up and
this
learning
one
some of these
well,
codes
we get this object
helps a lot.
that all it's doing is just returning this hello world.
I tend to take
this is a
I tend to take the
So in that
mouse
case, we
route
may want to
as much
have
as
multiple
possible. Click, click, click.
that are
But he
associated
gives
to
you 'em
our
all.
games that we're going to manage. So things
Like I
an
click on
ID, a
send
name,
request.
and a few other things, right? So what we're really missing here is what is commonly known as a data transfer object. Now, data transfer object, or DTO, is an object that carries data between processes or applications. It encapsulates data in a simple and standardized format that can be easily transmitted across different layers of an application or across different applications. So let's see how can we go ahead and define a DTO to represent our case. So let's go ahead and just close this file. And for this, we're going to be using actually the Solution Explorer.
Gonna go to Solution Explorer this time.
Let's open
He
up
does
that.
go back and forth a
We're
lot.
going to be using this anytime we want to create either folders or files for our project, because it's just easier to do it here than in the standard file explorer. So right click on the Kickstarter API, let's add a brand new folder. And we're going to name this folder DTOs. Now, keep in mind that other folks like to name this folder contracts as opposed to DTOs, which is totally fine because a DTO can be considered like a contract between the client and the server, because it represents the shared agreement between client and server about how the data will be transferred and used. So if you want, go ahead and name these contracts. That will be totally fine. It's just really the same thing. Now,
DTOs
initially,
are
this
the
regulate
contract
of
between
DTOs.
server and client,
Let's create
and
a brand new file. It's going to be, in this case, it's going to be a record, not a class, but a record, right? And let's name it game DTO. Okay. Now, why are we using record types here as opposed to a standard class? Well, the thing is that by default, records are immutable, meaning that once their properties are set, usually at the time we create these records, they cannot be changed, right? And this immutability is a perfect fit for DTOs because they typically carry data from one point to another without the need for modification. And on top of that, records reduce the boilerplate code that is typically associated with the class definitions intended for data holding, like DTOs. As you're going to see, you can define these records with just a single line.
so a record
with
file is
properties,
it says
which
it's
simplifies the
mutable,
code
so
base and makes
it won't be
much more,
changeable.
readable. And it has, I mean, record types have many other benefits, but these are the main ones that I see that are very useful for DTOs. Right? So
Good for
let's go
DTOs.
ahead and let me collapse this. So how do we define this DTO? First thing that we should do here is to actually match the namespace with the file structure. So let me open up my Explorer again. Remember that this is on our DTO directory.
He keeps closing it. It says, we're going to do this. Now let me open it back up.
The structure of my file system, I like to follow it also in the namespace. So for that, you can either type here just .dto, or you can choose this light bulb over here. You can click on that, and you can select the option that says change namespace to gamestore.api.dtos, right? So that's going to make it so that it matches, right? Let's collapse this. And now let's define the properties for the DTO. DTO is actually very easy to define. We don't actually need these curly braces. All we want to do is just open parentheses here, and here we can start declaring our properties. The first one is going to be our ID. That's going to be an int ID, and then the next property is going to be a name. Let's follow that with a genre. So genre is like, is it sports, racing, role playing, whatever kind of game you're dealing with. We also have
What did that just do?
price, and then at this point, by the way,
Looking
let
at
me just send this to the next slide.
assumptions again.
What we're working with here. Okay, we have the price, and lastly, we're going to be specifying a release date. For that one, we're going to do date only.
And this probably should
Date
go.
only release date. And we're doing date only because we don't really care about the time. All we care is about the date portion of the date. When the
What am I
game
doing?
is, right? Awesome. So now we have our DTO.
He's
ready.
just
And now we're
identifying
ready to
it,
go ahead
doing
and
it this way.
start taking advantage of it. So for that, let's go ahead and open our Explorer view once again, Ctrl+T, and let's go into program skills. Let's collapse this. Now, as we start writing the next few lines, just keep in mind that our API is going to be evolving across this tutorial, right? So you may see that the initial code that we write for this is going to be a little bit dirty and odd, but
He's fast, man.
That just so that we can
Okay,
solidify.
here's one of the things I like to do when I'm dealing with people going really fast. If they make it available, go to the code. He has the code available. Create it. He puts it on this other thing though, so I may have mentioned last time my wife gave me her cold, so now I'm sneezing a lot. So yeah. I was giving her a hard time about it, but it was my own fault. I mean, I says, I'm not going to be resistant to you. I'll be fine. And I was lying. I didn't know what I was talking about. Sure, I guess that's it. Yeah, that's, I don't know. I think I already did all this yesterday, but apparently you can't just log back in. That's kind of an annoying thing. Sheesh. And I only know this basically, but you don't. I don't want to do this no more. I don't know. Yeah, that's a pretty big problem. Thanks. Okay, now what? How do I actually get to the code? I'm logged in. Now I actually need to get to the code. Now what? How do I even close this page? How do I get out of this? Do I just go to forms? Is it actually taking me to the thing that this is supposed to be taking me to now? No. Gosh darn it. How do I get to the thing? He says he has code online, but apparently you can't actually go to it because you just keep going through this. There is no way out. Sorry. Once you're in, you're screwed. And it's just going to keep asking you questions. Yeah, don't... says get the source code, but you can't actually get the source code. So, yeah. Don't know what to tell you. If there's a way to get past this, feel free to let me know. I don't know. You can't do it. It does say send me a link. Maybe I should. Maybe that's what. Maybe the link actually goes to the object in here. Do I have a link? Let's go see if I have a link. It's not Grammarly, not LinkedIn, not Mayday, not NBA. I check my mail here. YouTube. Launch, Crokinole, Porn. Norton. I do not know. I get a lot of crap. My mail is significantly overloaded with junk. LinkedIn, Twitch. I'm Twitch, Restream, LinkedIn. Broadbeat application. I don't know. LinkedIn, secure access. Atlassian. Restream simple here. I do not know where this is going because it doesn't seem to be coming to me. Oh, here we go. Let's try this. Download. Okay, I think I found it. Maybe I found it. All right, so this might be the source code. Okay, this might be the source code. Okay, so I don't really want to look at it in VS Code because I don't want to copy his code. I mean, I want it, but I want to be able to reference it. So I'd rather have it like open in something else. His is actually called a different application. I guess the best way to do this would be to open it in a different app and then reference it when I need to. I was just hoping it would be like a bunch of code files, but I mean they are, and I could probably just read them, but that's not necessarily great either. Yeah. All right, well, let's go on to the game store. We got the API. Let's just open this up. I can just look at these in text. Can I preview them? Will it let me preview files in here? I don't know if the Windows Explorer knows how to read C#. Oh, it does. Okay, there we go. That's one way to do it. All right, so we're done. Let's go see what he's doing now. Back to task, folks. Got to get back on task. I don't know if I need... Whoa. What just happened there? Might not even need this. I'm not really using that right now. And I don't really need that either. Let's expand my window. Let's go full on. Not sure why I'm frozen here.
Initial concepts of REST APIs first, and then we're going to see how to refactor and
I don't know why I can't.
a much better implementation. And in that sense, what
I
we're
can't
going to
get
do
out of
is
this
to
window. Oh,
define a
here it
very
is.
simple list of games in memory using our DTO class. And we're going to see how to implement the different HTTP methods along or around that in-memory list. Later in the tutorial, we'll see how to transition from that in-memory list into an actual database. So what we're going to do here is perhaps just after the definition of our web application object over there, we're going to declare here a simple list of our game DTO, right? And notice that by selecting game DTO,
So he's just actually going into our original application, which is up here at the top. And we gotta get to Game Store. And then he's going to this guy, which I probably had down here too, I guess. And then he's just putting it in here over app.get. Yeah, I think he's running a really low resolution computer. I guess it's so that you can see more, but he doesn't. So if you're watching me, you're probably going, dude, yours is really hard to see. Notice how it brings in the using. So
this code automatically added a using statement over here, GameStore.api.dtos, right? So that it just did it by itself, and that what gives us access to the game DTO type. Now the name of this is going to be just games, and we're going to define that list right here. Now I have already prepared a small list of games just for us, so just so that you don't see me typing so much. So let me just go ahead
practice my typing.
Grab that list from my other window over here, as you can see.
So he's got his list of items already. So the best way to do that, if I don't want to type them out, and he's got a number of them, probably just go over to here, and he's got his list. I don't know, probably has it right in the same application file. So we can go uproot, and it's probably right in the programs.css. And then connection string. Right, where did he put that though? Oh, he's getting ahead of it. So this stuff is all this stuff is all predefined differently. So he must get into this later, because right now his program file does not have the same stuff. So I don't know where he's getting that. Or, you know, he obviously defines these at another location, because it's not here. He's not doing it here. Can't. Oh, I can't look at the HTTP file. So he doesn't have his files in here. So I don't know how we're supposed to read. I mean, I guess I could try to copy what he did, but he put a number of them in there, and without that reference. Oh, maybe he's got this data here. Let's go see. Is this it? See, this is all the stuff he does as he's developing the app. And this is all the app, but it's not what he's putting into this first scene. So if you want to follow along, see, he's kind of got this stuff, but his is totally different. So if I wanted to put his in, he does make it difficult to follow along, because when he copies and pastes and doesn't tell you what it is, and he doesn't have it set up like NetNinja does, where he actually does each lesson, or each thing he does is a lesson, and then that has that lesson stuff. So as the end version, the end project lesson has all the advanced code, which may or may not have gotten rid of stuff from the earlier parts, but as long as you grab the right lesson branch, you're going to see all the right stuff. So that's the best. It's a great way that NetNinja does it. This guy's just kind of going along. He says, hey, I have this stuff. Now I'm just going to throw it on here. Now he assumes, this guy's making the assumption that nobody's going to want to follow along other than just to watch. And if you're a watcher and learner, that's great for you. But I like to actually get in and do the code. It makes it very challenging to do what he's doing and watching it work and function if you can't actually do what he's doing. Because you're going to drop in 10 pieces of code. So I could probably make up some things. I'm going to do the first one he did. We're just going to go, he just dropped all this stuff in here. And it's like new. And then we're just going to say 2, comma, fantasy, space, xiv, equals, comma, role plating. What did I do? Did it do something dumb again? Oh, I hate it when it does that. Why? I just said 2. Why did it want to, why does it assume stupidness? So we got 2, Final Fantasy, role-playing, and then we're just going to go here. And then we're going to say 59.99 and M. I don't know, what's that? And then he does new date only 2010, comma 9, comma 30. And then we're going to go over here and we're done. Now, in order to get a similar thing, he just keeps putting them in by commas. We're going to go like that. All right, so he's got all these in. They're separated by commas. So we're just going to go like this. And I don't know what his, oops. Again, we'll say 2022. I'm only going to put in 2. I know it's not as much as him, but I don't want to have as many things because he's taken. This takes too long. 23. I can only see 2 on his anyway, so. And I don't know. I don't know what the M is. That dollars? 69 million pennies? 69,000 pennies? 69.99 M. Okay, so there, I got 2. Whatever. I don't have a 3, so when he puts in a 1, note that I don't have that.
See, I have now 3 games, right? So
oh, he only put in 3.
Just my favorite games, right? So ID1 is going to be Street Fighter 2. The genre is fighting. Now we have the price here, and we have an M here because we want to specify.
Actually, I gotta start wrapping up pretty soon because I gotta go get myself situated and ready.
Here because the compiler will not know if it's decimal or double. What is this, right? So it's going to
you know, because it's a video call. So I gotta look neat. I don't think showing up in a tank top's all that great. I did my workout this morning and just got to work, so I gotta get myself into a normal state of being. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up for now. I will try to be back a little bit later and do some more. I do want to get through this. It's not terribly long. I think I'm already a third of the way through, which probably should be farther because of the way that goes, but it's such life. I will finish this up later, and then I will have to start something new. I'm thinking either an advanced Python or even a, I still got to start working on my website, reverse engineering, so we'll do that too.